Hey everybody, it's Shelly. Welcome back to the Supernaturalist podcast, where we dig into the monsters, mythology, and mayhem of Supernatural, one episode at a time. Today we're talking about Season 3, Episode 13, Ghostfacers. And yes, before we get into the haunting itself, I need to say something that might be controversial. And I said it before with Hell House. I actually like Ghostfacers. I know a lot of people find them annoying, and I completely understand why, but I think Ed and Harry bring this bizarre, quirky, antagonistic energy to the series that somehow really works for me. It's an unpopular opinion, but I'm sticking with it. That being said, beneath all the shaky cameras, reality TV parody, and Ed and Harry chaos, this episode gives us a genuinely disturbing ghost story. Because the real monster here isn't just the haunted house, it's Freeman Daggett, a lonely, deeply unwell man whose obsession with keeping the dead as company turns Morton House into one of the creepiest locations in the series. So today, I want to focus less on the gimmick of the episode and more on the actual creatures at the center of it, like I do every week. It's all about the creatures here. If you want the full breakdown of the show, go listen to Supernatural Then and Now with Rob Benedict and Richard Speight Jr. My heroes. So Daggett, we're going to go over who he was, what he became, and why this haunting is so much darker than it originally appears. He's the monster of the week, Freeman Daggett. The creature in this episode is the ghost of Freeman Daggett, a former janitor at a local hospital who died in 1964. On paper, he sounds like a pretty standard supernatural ghost. Dead guy, bad history, unfinished business, haunting attached to a location. But Daggett is much worse than that. What makes him so memorable is how deeply unsettling his backstory is. Daggett wasn't just lonely, he was fixated on the dead. And while working at the hospital, he stole corpses from the morgue and brought them to Morton House to keep himself company. He treated them like companions, like guests at some twisted private birthday party. And after his death, that obsession didn't end. It evolved into a ritual. So every leap year on February 29th, beginning at midnight, Daggett traps people who come into the house and he murders them and adds them to his collection. Not just their bodies either. Their spirits remain trapped there as well. That's what makes the haunting especially horrifying. He doesn't just kill, he keeps them, their bodies, everything. And that need to keep people with him forever is what makes Daggett such a creepy villain. He's not motivated by revenge or rage or even justice. He's motivated by loneliness, twisted into possession. That's a very different kind of horror. So why this ghost is so disturbing? Well, a lot of supernatural ghosts are angry spirits tied to trauma, betrayal, or violent deaths. There's usually some kind of emotional logic to what they do and why they do it. Even when they're dangerous, you can usually trace the haunting back to some sort of pain. Daggett's haunting is colder and stranger. I think that maybe he was unwell as a living person, unwell in his mind, so that might be part of why he stole corpses. But he's like a supernatural version of somebody trying to force companionship. He doesn't want closure. He doesn't want justice. He wants an audience. He wants party guests. He wants bodies in chairs and spirits in the room and people who can never leave him. And the episode leans hard into that imagery. Instead of chains rattling in hallways or the usual ghostly jump scares, we get this grotesque party theme. There's decorations, a cake, "It's my party" music playing in the background. Victims posed like guests, sitting at a table. It's all built around the idea that Daggett has transformed murder into a ritualized social event. It's incredibly creepy because it turns something familiar, a party, a gathering, a celebration, into something deeply, deeply wrong. It's not just death, it's performance, it's delusion, it's loneliness weaponized. And we have Morton House as a trap. The haunting also works because Morton House isn't just where the ghost appears, it functions like a supernatural trap. Once midnight hits on February 29th, anybody still inside the house is sealed in for the night, and nobody has ever survived. Anyone Daggett takes becomes part of the house, even in death. And that means Morton House isn't just haunted by one spirit, it's crowded with trapped echoes of previous victims. That's where the death echoes come in. Now, the Ghostfacers first capture what looks like a ghost on camera, but Sam and Dean realize they're dealing with residual hauntings, moments of traumatic death replaying themselves over and over. That's a death echo. Normally, death echoes are creepy, but they're limited. They're basically recordings, not active attackers. But in Morton House, they do something more. They reveal the scale of the horror. These victims didn't all die there originally. In fact, none of them did. But their suffering is imprinted in the house. Their spirits are still stuck, still replaying their worst moments, unable to move on. And Daggett's haunting doesn't just create fear in the present, it preserves fear from the past, which means the house itself becomes a museum of stolen deaths. And that's such a strong horror concept. So enter the Ghostfacers. Of course, this being Ghostfacers, all of this gets filtered through the chaos of Ed, Harry, and their reality show crew. And yes, I still love them. I know they're ridiculous. I know they're loud and overconfident and absolutely not equipped for haunting like this, but I think that's part of why they work in this episode. They're quirky. Their antagonistic vibe doesn't weaken the horror for me. It actually sharpens it because they walk into Morton House treating it like content, like a spooky opportunity. And that makes the moment when they realize the danger is real hit even harder. And that scares the crap out of them. Ed and Harry and their crew, they're not seasoned hunters. They're paranormal enthusiasts with cameras, branding, and way too much confidence. They set up command centers, break the investigation into phases, and keep filming no matter how bad things get. And in a weird way, the constant filming helps the episode. Kind of forces us to see Daggett's haunting through frightened amateur eyes. We don't get the polished, controlled Winchester perspective like in other episodes. We get panic, confusion, messy footage, and people trying to make sense of horrors they absolutely do not understand. And that makes Freeman Daggett feel even more dangerous. Now we have Sam and Dean versus Daggett. When Sam and Dean show up, they immediately understand that something is wrong beyond the usual ghost story. They know the house has to be cleared out before midnight. They know the amateur investigators need to leave. They know the haunting is escalating fast. But by the time they figure out the pattern, it's already too late. It's after midnight and they're locked in. And that's one of the reasons Daggett feels so effective as a monster. Timing is part of his power. He has rules. He has a cycle. He has a ritual window. When once midnight passes, he controls the game. Sam and Dean start uncovering who Daggett was. He was a hospital janitor, a survivalist, a man who stole corpses and hid them away. That survivalist anger matters because it leads Dean to realize there might be a hidden shelter or basement room, which becomes crucial later. But it also adds another layer to Daggett's psychology. He wasn't just isolated. He was somebody preparing for disaster, for withdrawal, for life underground and away from other people. Morton House becomes an extension of that mindset. Sealed off, hidden, full of things he kept for himself. Even after death, he's still hoarding. Now, not supplies, but people's bodies. The party scene and Daggett's true horror. The clearest expression of who Daggett is comes in the birthday party sequence. Sam and Corbett are tied to chairs. There's cake, there's music, there's this grotesque attempt at festivity. And Daggett appears not just as a killer, but as the host. That's what makes this scene land so hard. He doesn't kill in a frenzy. He kills like he's carrying out a ritual he's done many, many times before. And Corbett is murdered with a spike through the neck. And when Sam is positioned like the next participant in the evening's entertainment, things start going very wrong. It's awful, and it's meant to be. And this is where the episode stops being just a parody and reminds us that the creature at the center of the story is genuinely monstrous. And again, I think when he was alive, he was not all there when he was alive. And that's what prompted him to start stealing bodies. And if recent events are any indication, I think those survivalist people are not all right in the head anyway. So that's just my opinion. I might be wrong. Who knows? Anyway, Freeman Daggett isn't haunting people because he was wronged. Nobody wronged him. He just died. I mean, he lived his life and died. He's actually recreating the fantasy of togetherness through violence and control. Again, not quite all there. That's nightmare material. Corbett, death echoes, and fighting back. One of the most interesting things about this episode is how the mechanics of Daggett's haunting are ultimately used against him. Corbett, who you may also recognize as Ted Mullins in Schitt's Creek, dies and initially becomes just another trapped spirit replaying his death as a death echo. That's exactly what Daggett wants, another party goer. Now, when his death echo appears in front of Ed and Harry, Harry tells Ed that Corbett was in love with him, and a very funny line that we see many times on social media with supernatural memes and videos is Harry telling Ed, You go be gay for that dead intern. I thought that was kind of funny. And I know people who don't like Ghostfacers are like rolling their eyes, but whatever. That's my take. Now for fun facts and behind the scenes info. Ghostfacers is a sequel of sorts to Hell House. Ed Zedmore and Harry Spangler first appeared in Season 1, Episode 17, Hell House. Their return in this episode expands them from a one-off comic relief into recurring cult favorite characters. That might be stretching it for some of you, but like I said, I like the Ghostfacers. The episode is styled like found footage reality TV on purpose. The shaky cameras, confessional title cards, and rough edits are all deliberate parody elements after paranormal reality shows that were especially popular in the 2000s. If you know, you know. I was a fan of those, and this episode has one of the most unique visual formats in the series. Most of Supernatural episodes follow the show's standard cinematic style, but Ghostfacers is presented almost entirely through the crew's cameras, making it stand out immediately from the rest of the season, from the rest of the episodes, all 15 seasons. The Ghostfacers became more than a one-episode gimmick. The popularity of the characters led to additional Ghostfacers content outside the main episode format, including web-based material tied to the franchise. I have yet to find it. I'm telling you, if you know where this is, I have looked on YouTube, online, everything. I cannot find that footage anywhere. Anyway, Corbett's storyline gives the episode its emotional core. What starts out as a broad parody shifts into something more affecting because Corbett's death and ghostly return are played with genuine feeling, giving the episode more emotional depth than people really expected. The episode pokes fun at both ghost hunters and media sensationalism. It's not just about haunted houses. It's also a satire of exploitive television, especially when tragedy gets packed into dramatic quote-unquote content. And Sam and Dean's camera presence is really part of that joke. Seen through the Ghostfacers footage, the Winchesters come off like impossibly cool, intimidating professionals, which exaggerates their usual image in a really funny way. The erased footage ending is classic Winchester logic. The electromagnetic trick fits perfectly with the brothers' long-running priority. Keep the supernatural hidden, even if that means destroying someone's big break. And they admit at the end it was good footage, but people can't know about the supernatural. It freak them out. So that wraps up this week's dive into Supernatural Season 3, Episode 13, Ghostfacers. And whether you think the episode is chaotic genius or just plain chaos, there's really no denying that it left a mark. It's weird, it's funny, it's creepy, and somehow, against all odds, it has a surprising amount of heart. And for me, I'm still proudly Team Ghostfacers. Unpopular opinion or not, I love the strange little energy Ed and Harry bring to the supernatural universe. They might be awkward, overdramatic, and wildly unqualified, but they make this world feel bigger, stranger, and a whole heck of a lot more fun. So if you enjoyed this episode of Supernaturalist, please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe. comment, and share with others who are supernatural fanatics like I am, or like you are, and let me know. Are you a Ghostfacers defender, or are you firmly on the absolutely not side of the fence? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Until next time, keep your salt handy, trust no haunted house after midnight, and remember, sometimes the weirdest episodes are the ones that stick with you the longest. Thank you for listening to Supernaturalist, and have a great weekend.